broadcasting around the world. This is the Hard Asset Money Show. Your wealth, your money, your future. Serious talk about what's happening and how you profit. Hosted by Christian Briggs. Follow him on X at BMC_HAM. Live in 3, 2, 1.
It's day 6 of the shutdown, and there still doesn't seem to be an end in sight. Now, Republicans proposed an exceedingly reasonable deal, but Democrats in Congress rejected it, forcing a shutdown that is costing the American people money every single moment. And there's one pressing question central to the whole story. Just how far will Democrats push their demands? Are they willing to keep the government shut down for days? How about for weeks? How about for months or years? Where is the line? Where does the madness end? See, the battle lines are perfectly clear, but when the battle itself will end is unclear. Now, Republican lawmakers have done their part in proposing and passing a clean, nonpartisan spending bill to fund the government through November 21st, pitting the chaos squarely on the shoulders of Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and his colleagues who are refusing to budge. Meanwhile, Democrats have claimed that they're open to real negotiation, but their actions suggest otherwise. And the only way they'll ever play ball is if Republicans approve healthcare subsidies for illegal immigrants. Interesting. Isn't that telling? Isn't it eye-opening and extremely revealing? And it leaves one wondering, who do Democrats in Congress really represent? And for what do they stand?
This podcast is brought to you by Hard Asset Management. We have the lowest prices on all precious metals. Call us at 844-426-4653. That's 844-426-4653.
Now, here with his thoughts and reaction is the CEO of Hard Asset Management, Christian Briggs. Thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. And I'm right here in the heart of D.C., just a few blocks away from the White House, watching all this happen in real time.
It's unbelievable. To think the fate of America is basically in the hands of Chuck Schumer is unnerving, to say the least. But I do want to get your thoughts about the current situation we find ourselves in and how we're going to get out of it.
Well, let's first of all, I think we're in the hands of Ocasio. I think she, like last week, said if the president wants to negotiate, have him call me. And of course, Nancy Pelosi didn't appreciate that comment. There's a lot of talk right here today, being in D.C. live. I mean, it's dead. I mean, as far as the city goes, what was vibrant and a lot of the small businesses that are so deeply and heavily really kind of succumb to this furlough. I mean, they're losing a lot of money. So let's talk about the heart of things and why the Democrats are doing what they're doing. So you got to remember, as a Democratic base, as you know, it used to be kind of like that middle class, okay? And now it's more of the upper class. And I say that with dear respect. They're pandering to the illegals on this healthcare thing. They're trying to use that as their sounding board to say, look who's in your corner, look who's fighting for you. But really, at the end of the day, I think there's more politics involved than anything. It always seems to go down to politics over constituents and over, some of the people they say they represent. But when you start to look at what's happening now, and I hesitate to say this, but whether this drags on another 1 day or 1 month, this is not helping anybody. No. The Republicans may have the upper hand on the negotiations, or certainly the perception of what the American people are seeing, because they do believe that they're blaming more the Democrats. But I tell this to people, nobody wins, even in a tie, when you're trying to cross the tracks and a train hits you and it's a tie. Everybody loses. Even if this is a tie, we're going to lose as a country. So I don't see it letting up. I'm here today talking to people on the Hill, and there's nobody here right now that wants to talk about negotiations.
That's interesting. Frankly, it's embarrassing. I mean, we're the center of global politics, and to think we can't even figure out how to keep the government open is it's abysmal. And I know President Trump is working on this very hard. He's very serious about it, but he's only one man. So we need people in the House and the Senate, and really the Senate here, to get serious. People like Schumer. And your point about AOC, it's taken, but That's kind of the crux of the problem, isn't it, with American politics, is people putting party over country. That is a toxic phenomenon, and I don't know how to combat it, but that's, I think, one of the core problems that we're really facing today.
Well, yeah, you're putting ideology ahead of American livelihood. I mean, think about this. Okay, when you're putting ideology at the forefront of the reasoning of the basis that you're making these decisions, that ideology better be pro-America, pro-Americans, pro-business, and pro-paychecks. Because if it's not, like in this case, it's not, you're literally hurting. I hesitate again to use some of these stats, but let's just talk about what this economy is going to do if this thing continues.
Please.
You've got between 62 and 67% of America right now that's living paycheck to paycheck. Now, I want you to remember that 99%, by the Chamber of Commerce's own numbers, that 99% of America is supporting, in the GDP that is, of small business being under 500 employees. And really, when you get down to the heart of the small business, it's under 50 employees. Now, if you consider that 99% of this, the GDP is built and really kind of threshold on that small business, and then all of a sudden you've got every city in America is being affected. Okay, it's not just Washington, D.C. When you're furloughing federal workers, I can assure you there is a federal worker building in any major city. Okay,
yes.
So they're being furloughed. So all these small businesses that rely on the breakfast, the lunch, the dinners, the dry cleaners, the gas, the convenience stores, the daycare. Wow. When you start to think about that, I think Scott Bessent is extremely right about this. One, the president's on the right side of this trade. We'll call it a trade, if you will. Two, he did say if it goes of any length of time, we're going to have a GDP affected. He's right about that. Trump is a one-man band right now trying to do his very best to shoulder the entire United States economy on one person's ideology, which is Chuck Schumer, and that ideology is not pro-America. Let's just say it for what it is. Holding out $1.5 trillion, which we can't even afford if we wanted to, but it's unconstitutional. Let's look at the oath of office. So they're holding up billions, trillions of dollars, billions on a day, trillions on a yearly, only because of one reason: power, positioning. The Democrats are going to fold. I guarantee it. It's going to happen. We are going to win this race. The only problem is, what's the casualty going to be?
Yes. And really, there's another question there in terms of how much pain can the everyday American absorb? And it's hard to think about that, and just to think this government is so big, to your point, that when it shuts down, the whole ecosystem goes into disarray. However, I do want to focus on Schumer for a minute, because you just brought something up. You said his ideology isn't pro-America. So let me ask you, Christian, in your view, what is it?
The ideology has really, the Democratic Party has taken a far left turn. If we were going down the highway back in Clinton days, back in the 90s, mid 90s, you remember Bill Clinton today looks like a conservative. I wouldn't call him a far right by any means, but he's a conservative. He's definitely like a JFK was, center right.
Sure.
And when you look at today, the Democratic Party is about socialism. It's about the taxation of the 70, 80% tax rates. It's about minimal wealth creation, minimal wealth maintaining, and having something, because the redistribution is like the candidate Mamdani for New York said, I've got a better way to redistribute the wealth. So the Democratic Party, and this guy's got Hochul, the governor of New York, endorsed this guy. So that is your Democratic Party. So Chuck Schumer is not working with the old blue dog Democrats in the 50s and 60s, even through in the 90s with Clinton. The Democratic Party was the party of the middle class. Okay? So Chuck Schumer has embraced two things. And I want to make sure I'm very clear about this. One, he has embraced the ideology that anybody who doesn't agree with their party is a fascist, is a racist, is all this different stuff. I mean, I can't even go down the dictionary. There's so many words. Yes. And the second thing is they believe that there is a core amount of people that can centralize the power and take that wealth and redistribute it better than when an entrepreneur take anybody that's ever made from zero to hero. Nothing. And I'm not talking about the trust fund babies. I got respect for them too, because many of them have done well with what they're inherited. But let's talk about the real American that starts with nothing. And I won't say it's a real American and only exclude anybody else, but these are the fundamental basis on what America was founded on. And that is what? equal opportunity. We're not
Yes.
all equal. I'm 6'8". Good luck trying to dunk if you're 4'8", but that's okay. I look at it like this. We have the same opportunities. The Democratic Party doesn't believe that everybody has equal opportunity. They want to marginalize anybody's talent and then try to section us off into this understanding that, well, if you have wealth, then you need to give more. You need to have that, let us determine what's
Yes.
best for the American people. That's the problem. That is the ideology of the Democratic Socialist Party.
Well, that's the really critical thing here is you have people like Mom Donnie who say, let the government run your life. We'll control your grocery stores, your DMV, your public transportation. But then you look at situations like this and you see how much dysfunction there is. And you got to think to yourself, how could we possibly give the government more power when they've shown they just can't wield it responsibly or effectively for that matter? And that brings us to a deeper issue here. Let's talk about the funding problem for a minute. The fact the government's even running out of money so frequently, leading to so many shutdown negotiations, is just really concerning. And we have to talk about fixing this core problem of reckless spending. As it stands, we're spending about $1 trillion every 100 days, bleeding $2 trillion basically every single year, approaching $38 trillion of national debt. And I know there are some people in DC who care very much about this issue. They're serious about it. We've had some of them on the show. However, big picture, as far as the average American goes, the problem just, it seems to get bigger and bigger, just like the government itself. It's almost like the two are linked. And I'm wondering, when are we going to see the kind of aggressive action that we need to bring down the national debt and just get back on the right track? That's obviously central to this whole problem. We keep shutting down because we keep running out of money, because we keep printing and spending like the dollar grows on trees, when it obviously does not. So, Christian, what is your assessment of the spending problem, and what do we need to do to really fix that? Because that is at the center of all of these issues that we're talking about that are deeply connected.
Wow. Okay, that's a heck of a question. What do we do?
Am I wrong? That's so central to what's going on here. We're spending too much money.
Let me give some statistics. First I'm going to give you some statistics. Then I'm going to answer your question. Okay. I'm here in DC because of this exact reason. I have meetings here in a little bit that I'm going to at least share with you guys kind of what the macro, the government view is down to the micro. Number one is, I'll tell you how bad it is. Since September 2nd through last night, okay, let's talk about October 5th, okay? The the debt to GDP ratio has gone up about 128 basis points. That's 1.28, give or take a basis point or a point here and there, but not by much though, maybe 128, 127. Now, let me tell you what that reflects. We are now at just a nip under $38 trillion. If anybody wants to check this out, go to the US debt clock. I assure you my numbers are perfect because we follow this in real time. What we're trying to do is to take what is the measure of debt and then try to do predictable models. And if we continue to increase, we're spending about $400 billion a month. Wow. In the non-tax revenue months. I mean, obviously April is a big month, and so is October and September when you have corporate tax dues. But if you exclude those months, we're probably going to add $3.5 to $4 trillion in fiscal 26 to the debt. Wow. Now, unless these interest rates come down, and I mean they've got to come down, and they got to get below 3%, we're going to have issues with the fulfillment of the debt obligation. Here's a number that you need to be aware of. 18 months ago, we were adding $1 trillion to the national debt about every 100 days. So you were correct. Do you realize in the last 79, we've added 1.3 trillion in prolonged debt as well as short-term liabilities, which will be added to the debt each month. And those are basically 3-month, 6-month treasuries that were sold. They just haven't reflected on the debt yet. As we continue to do that, it's a domino effect. It's going to perpetuate itself to where I'm not so sure we can pay it back. But I think Trump's got a plan, and hear me out on what I think he wants to do, because this is where it's going to get fun. If anybody wants to know the state of a society or a economy, follow their currency. What's gold been doing? Gold has gone up over 60% thereabouts in the last 12, 18 months. it's showing that we're having trouble with the debt and the fulfillment of the obligation on a long-term basis, at least on the perception. And so I think what President Trump is doing, which is an amazing feat given the partisan antics that are going on in Congress, getting passed into this new digital age of stablecoins could be really helpful, because when issuers issue the stablecoins, there are banks that are licensed to do this, it'll prop up short-term buying of our debt. That will lower rates. So what he's doing is he's taking the long game approach. He says, yeah, we're going to have some debt. Yeah, it's going to incrementally get bad. It will even increase. But remember, he's really good at this. So in the long run, what he's trying to do is to stabilize the revenue model so we have better coverage and better clarity on what we can come in with tax revenues.
Yes.
Decrease deficit spending by lowering interest rates, because that lowers the interest on the debt. So that in itself is like increasing revenue.
Yes.
The tariffs are bringing in about 50 to 100 billion a month. I think that could accelerate once he finalizes China. China's the 800-pound gorilla in the room that he's got to finalize.
Yes.
Once he does that, everybody's going to have clarity. We're going to win the race. Look, this is America, okay? We don't lose. Okay, so we're going to win. It's going to take time, and these mechanisms that he's put into place, they'll work. It's on a spreadsheet, they work. Problem is, everybody wants microwave or they want drive-through results. You can't. You got to be a little bit more patient than that. But the bottom line is, increase GDP, lower interest rates, lower interest on the debt. That slows the growth of the debt. But it's going to take a little time, and there may be another, a year or so before you start to see any measure of these things perform.
Okay, that's really interesting. Coming up next, President Trump eyes sending the National Guard to crime-ridden Chicago, much to the chagrin of Democrat lawmakers. More details after the break.
In uncertain times, the smartest money doesn't sit in the stock market, it holds weight. The price of gold has risen from $1,700 an ounce in 2020 to over $3,800 by late 2025. Silver is currently around $46 an ounce, a 155% increase from roughly $18 5 years ago. Follow on X at BMC_HAM for all news and the latest developments.